I'm really excited about this. Part of today is about Ellen launching a brand new cultural newsletter. I think we can put it that way. It's a partnership, a collaboration. We will work together over stories. I think that's really important for the independent media, but we'll explore that a little bit more afterwards. But really, could you just open up with a bit of your background and your journey, because it's been quite varied.
Well, Warren yourself, started over here in local media at the Voice of the Islands, BBC Guernsey, many years ago. I actually started cutting tapes, so that is how long ago that was. And that was an immersion in radio, but it was also an immersion in local culture. It was absolutely the 5 years I worked at Radio Guernsey, you just discover everything about this island. At 19, I was producing Dan Courtney's morning radio show, which was 3 hours, 5 days a week, and you had to fill that. So you had to literally find out anything that was going on the island to fill 3 hours of radio. So that's what I did.
That's amazing. And your journey's moved on, and you found yourself in France. How did you get there?
So I went to Leeds University, did a placement year, and went to Paris on the placement year, and just kind of got a job in. There's a cliche that if you move to Paris as an English speaker, you either work in fashion or in cosmetics, and as a journalist I did both. I worked covering perfume launches. It's very different from interviewing various doing the phones for Peter Roffey and then interviewing people and trying to pretend that I cared about a perfume launch, but that was my life. And then fashion journalism, which was a really intense, you're 14 fashion shows a day, you're running around, you've got the lights going, and you've got to grab the celebrity that's just walked in, get a soundbite whilst everyone's waiting for you to sit down for the fashion show to start. So just level of humiliation, but also really good fun, and sort of really getting to know Paris, which is obviously capital of fashion, they like to say the capital of fashion because that's how the French are very good at selling themselves. So, so that was the experience there. It was and then I moved on into communications for a slower pace. Then kind of came back to Guernsey professionally a few years ago. Did a role representing Guernsey in cultural and press relations, which was just unbelievable to me after living in Paris 20 years and having worked in local media. Suddenly realising there were all these stories I didn't know between our islands and France, suddenly realising there was so much that I had absolutely no idea of. And then hence what we're launching today.
Yeah, and what has your experience in France, or what do you think their view of the islands is? I mean, I know that's hideously general. I appreciate that question.
Well, I mean, we've probably all have it, haven't we, on holidays in France? You say you're from Guernsey and you get various responses, don't you? They sort of range from, there's so many responses that they range. It depends where you are, of course. In Brittany, I remember saying once, because so often you have to explain where Guernsey is, and in Brittany, I remember just saying once, I'm just terrible, don't judge me for it, but I just said I was English because I didn't want to go into the 10-minute conversation. I didn't have time. So I just said I'm English. And then, of course, there was a market seller and he carried on asking me. And I said, actually, from, where specifically? I said, Guernsey. He said, you are not English. And I said, oh, yes, you're absolutely right, thank you. And actually, that was, so I think if you're in Normandy or Brittany, our identity, our islands are better known. Then, unfortunately, in some areas, when I started the role for representing Guernsey, I realised that in the cultural circles in Paris, we did have a very one-dimensional image, which I'll just quote you one journalist who said, you are a floating bank and you're stealing our fish. So that was really quite a harsh, you take it so personally. I think, they do say that when a Guernsey person goes around the world, there's no better ambassador for Guernsey, and you do take it so personally when you realise that we're seen like that. But actually, that conversation ended really well because I told him that's not all we are. He was a cultural journalist, very interested in linguistics. So I told him that's not who we are, and managed, in fact, actually to build up a friendship where he ended up coming and volunteering for the Earth Fair. So that was a result. That was a real transformation, and that transformed his view of the islands, coming over and taking part in a local event.
Well, why launch this newsletter? Why now?
Well, so discovering a few years ago that how much is happening, how many stories there are between the islands and France, and then really now I think the momentum is just unbelievable between the islands and France. There are so many different connections. There's so much work going on behind the scenes. The Channel Islands office in Caen, who support so many different connections. There's all the organic connections, just the grassroots connections, and then we've obviously got this finally direct ferry service who are supporting on the marketing side. So there's so much momentum with France, but I feel like if people know more of our cultural stories before they come, they'll love us even more when they do come. Because I did have last summer I was going back to Somali, and I got chatting to someone in the departure lounge who was your classic visitor you would want for the island. She was a retired journalist living in Somalia. You'd want her to be coming back and back. And again, take it so personally, but she'd loved Victor Hugo's house, but she said to me she'd already messaged her family in Somalia to say, you don't need to do overnight, you can see it all in a day. And that was just devastating. I thought, how have you gone away thinking you can do it in a day? That's no, there's so much more to us. And that's really devastating to hear. And there's so much going on, but I think when visitors arrive, if they've already know the stories to look for, if they already know some of them and see us as more of a culturally dynamic place, then that would help.
I don't want you to give everything away that's coming up in your coverage, but I think it'd be nice to give at least one example of a story about Guernsey that you think should be told in France.
Well, this one is very close to my heart because it's one that I've been involved with all my life, pretty much. But this year, it's the Channel Islands' longest-running festival celebrates its 50th anniversary, which is a phenomenal achievement. To think that in 1976, in that long hot summer, a group of friends, including my dad, which is why it's close to my heart, they started this event in a castle. Somehow got permission to use it and created a festival that still exists 50 years on. And there have been French acts who've come over the years, but the full festival story has not been told in French and has not been told in a way that encapsulates. You think that it encapsulates so much of what is wonderful about Guernsey, the voluntary aspect, the fact that there's no, it's a castle on the sea where you listen to music for 12 hours. There's no corporate sponsorship. It's just people, a collective organising, getting on. And obviously I'm saying all this with Jade sat here, so who's one of the main organisers. But it's really, that's the kind of story for France that really can take away from our, get rid of that one-dimensional image and show that we do have so much going on. Some of the acts we've got over the years, and very much in the French mind, which is complete generalisation, sorry, for the entire country, but I do think there is a real perspective that British people have, the best music, and we're this little island, with our British-French roots, and we do have a festival that gets brilliant acts over, so it really taps into what they expect of the British as well. Obviously, we do have this Anglo-Normand identity, so yeah, I think that's one story to really tell.
Let's flip it on its head. What do we need to understand more about France?
Well, that is a whole other ball game. I mean, well, obviously at the moment it's France is gearing up for next spring for pretty much the election of the country's lifetime. When I moved over in 2003, I first moved over. So Le Pen, who's the far right, the former, dead now, he had just got through in 2002 to the second round of the presidential elections, and the entire country had turned out to vote and keep him out. And what has happened in the 20 years since, and at that time, the far right wouldn't have been interviewed on any French media. You wouldn't have heard a word from a far right politician. That was just how it was. Now, 20 years on, it's 24/7. We've got a media in France I think we've got 90% of France's media that's in private hands is owned by 9 men. That's the level of concentration now. So the need for independent media in France, and luckily that other 10% is absolutely flourishing. There are so many different media, including in Brittany and Normandy, fantastic independent media that we are looking to collaborate with and bring some of those stories to the island audiences. And also, I mean, in terms of it has been quite difficult, well, not difficult this summer, but I've come back. I am actually here escaping the heat in Paris. Normally I just come in August. It's been 40 degrees since May. I haven't really had a decent night's sleep for May and June. You just cannot, the nights haven't cooled down. We are living the climate breakdown. The fires at the moment across France, obviously people with family there are tracking them. And that, you get back here and, I've got Guernsey people are a bit annoyed because they've had to put their butter in the fridge. It's just, and I do get it. It is better at room temperature. I totally get it. But it's such a gap between what is happening on that land and what we are kind of experiencing here, which, after being here a few weeks, I realised, but of course I look at my phone every day and then, friends saying they're putting survival blankets on their windows. We've just gone into the 4th insane heat wave. I think Paris is 39 today, so it's not too bad. But that, I've had plenty of messages because of being in Paris so long on all various Guerns that get on that direct flight from Orany, through Orany, which is amazing, and then they land in Paris, and there's get messages from parents who are just beside themselves because their children cannot cope with the heat, and it's like, where do we go to get cool, Ellen? It's like, that's an article we need to supply. So yeah, those are the stories we need to hear, really. The fact that next year France is potentially could fall to the far right, and there's no reason for that. There's no mysterious rise of the right. It's being funded, it's being financed, being platformed across the media. So the more that independent media are platforming the other candidates, and also the fact that this isn't, in a democracy. You talked, earlier about how important media is to a democracy. Well, in 2024, the Nouveau Front Populaire, which was the alliance of the left that grouped together and in 3 weeks won an election when Macron had called a snap election. It took 3 weeks to just galvanise the country and win the most seats. Because they didn't win a parliamentary majority, Macron did not allow them to govern. So we're already living in a denial of democracy, and the more independent media there are, and informing that is going on, the better.
And I guess, from my perspective, the collaboration between independent media it's so important, because otherwise we're just a small voice. But we're also just one mind as well. So this is why I'm quite excited about working with more people, and hopefully we can that collaboration can spread even further. That'd be so exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, some of the stories you've done, I was like, we can do those for France, and I can, crossing the perspectives as well, because our politicians can tell us, France has told them anything when it comes to relationships. Thinking more of Jersey here, but with the ferry service, and how that unfolded, and actually we can cross perspectives with what people are actually saying in France, and bring new stories.
And I guess I'm just talking again about being an independent journalist, but sources are everything, stories are everything. Is there anything people can help you with in this room today as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just like to know what stories everyone thinks France should be hearing about the islands, really, and what whether, I think everyone has experiences of telling French people you're from Guernsey, and those perspectives can, that can inform directions I go in for certain stories. But also, it's not just the French connection. I want to just tell our stories in in France. Some of the things that people don't know about us at all. I mean, half of France just don't understand why we're not French anyway. So there's the one to start with. And yeah, it's any stories and everything going on here really is going to be interesting to me.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I encourage everyone, obviously, to sign up when the newsletter's launched.
Exactly. Yeah, coming up on August the 8th, which is a very special day. It'll be 50 years to the day that the Vale Earth Fair started. So I thought that's the launch date. We'll launch then, and then we can get the news out 3 weeks before the actual festival. And turns out 76 was an incredible year for all sorts of French connections with the island. So it's a bit of a happy 50th, which is, we'll launch with a happy 50th. So there we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you've got all this way, I'm really hoping that you've enjoyed our work. There's a few things you can do though to support us. Follow, like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help spread the word of the Quarry. The other thing you can do is head on over to our website, where you can become a member and really support independent local news.